Diamonds are a girl's best friend until they're not. This is Chapter 12 of Author Talks with Lisa T, and coming up, I chat with author Jessie Rosen about her adult debut novel, The Heirloom, during which we both share our favorite family superstitions. So we have a woman with certain rules/superstitions passed down by her Italian grandmother, and it causes all kinds of problems when her longtime boyfriend proposes with an heirloom engagement ring. So tell us a little bit more about the heirloom.
So it may not surprise readers to know that this is my own superstition from my own Italian grandmother and ancestors. And I really wanted to play with this idea of not only what kind of whirlwind journey could you go on if you were insistent on finding the owner's, plural, everyone that ever wore the vintage ring you received. Like, what would that look like? How would you even go about it? So that's really the engine behind the story. But also, I wanted to play with the deeper things inside, which is, why are you so hung up on this superstition? And what does that mean if this ring is more important than this, long-standing love that you've had that is ready to take that next step? So that's a huge piece of what my heroine uncovers in the book too.
So having an Italian grandmother of my own and having a friend who's 100% Sicilian, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess the heirloom thing isn't the only superstition that your grandma armed you with.
No. In fact, there are so many, and I think there's two different kinds. Maybe you're familiar with this. So there are things that you do not do for whatever they may bring.
But usually do not do if you want to get married.
100%. You want to get married. You want to have a good marriage. You want to have a healthy marriage, all this stuff. But then there are things that you do, like burying saints all around backyards and placing them in different places, wearing them around your neck. So yeah, it was huge. And I always thought it was really fun. And when I got to the point of exploring it in this book, I realized that, those fears are really fascinating. And where do they come from? Especially some people can kind of let it go here and there, but I wanted to play with a character that couldn't let it go.
So we have your main character, Shay. She ends up chasing the history of this ring across Europe, back to the States. Along the way, of course, she finds herself drawn to a man who is not her fiance. And I think, just from reading the book, I think you're going to end up with like a Twilight situation on your hands. You're going to have readers who are Camp John, and you're going to have readers who are Camp Graham.
Yeah. And as a writer, the writer, I really struggled until I landed on my realization of what I wanted to say about this specific heroine. And I think about different kinds of stories that involve romance that we've seen. And without giving anything away, I feel like I've read certain styles and places that you may think the story is going to go. And I just wanted to offer a little bit of a different view, a different option. So again, without giving anything away, it became more about what I wanted to say about love and marriage and relationships and really personal growth. Then it became about either man, actually. So it's almost like my heroine decided who she should be with by virtue of what I felt like she was going through. And then the choice became very clear to me. But listen, I love them both.
We should back up a little bit. So John is the fiance who proposes with the heirloom. Graham's the journalist who finds out that Shay's going to go on this crazy adventure to find the history and tags along.
That's exactly right.
So as this is going on, I knew where you were taking me as a reader, like setting these two up. And I liked them both. And I was like, oh my God, who is she going to end up with? Because it could be either one. And honestly, both of them are really great guys. Like, you really paint them in a way that this really is Shay's story. Like you said, it's not about these two men.
Yeah. And that was a tough decision just because I am such a reader of stories that I think have a little bit more of a traditional structure where it really is, will she, won't she with him, or which him will she end up with? And so, yeah, it was an interesting challenge for me to say, what if I set myself up that we understand either decision that she makes? And that was kind of cool to explore that and to really make it a little bit more about why is she making these decisions? What's going on in her past? What heirlooms, if I may, that aren't rings is she holding on to that is a part of why this is such a tough place for her to find herself?
I love this idea that it's about not the love that you have, but the idea of opening yourself up to allowing yourself to love somebody, but also more importantly, allowing yourself to be loved.
Yeah. And I think that was really one of the huge struggles of my character. And I also think that sometimes it's very scary. And I've certainly been in this situation myself to admit that that is something we're struggling with. Oh, wait a minute. It's actually about allowing myself to take this love in. Why is that hard for me? And then, ooh, what do I need to do to heal that so that I can be really present and really safe and secure in this relationship? I feel like I saw so many men and women who were friends journeying through the process of approaching potentially a lifelong commitment, challenged with that exact same thing.
And lucky for Shay, though, her sister's a counselor.
That's
And
exactly right.
she doesn't have to
I was like,
pay for therapy because her sister dishes it out.
how can I get that therapist in there without writing a whole new character? Yeah, I love that. And I also feel like I have a lot of sisters and cousins, and there are a lot of women in my family who are not actually, one of them is an official counselor, but just all of them are counselors in the lowercase c capacity. Really, I have so many friends who serve that role. So the voice of Annie is really so many women in my life.
And I love that there's no doubt that her sister's going to go on this trip with her that when she
Right,
embarks on it.
right.
So you mentioned that one of your superstitions is no to heirloom jewelry. Would you do something like this? Would you, if someone somewhere that were to give you a piece of jewelry that you did not know the provenance of, would you go chasing the history?
That is how this book came to be.
Get
So
out.
11 years ago, when my now husband was getting ready to, I now know, propose, he just kind of casually asked if there was anything that he should know. And I said, the ring has to be new. No heirlooms, no vintage, no family heirlooms, no vintage of any kind. And friends were debating me left and right on this. I'm a lover of other vintage things. Like right now, I am wearing, listeners, I'm wearing a vintage scarf. So I had a lot of friends debating me on this. Like, that's ridiculous. Come on. What if the absolute most beautiful and perfect ring with lots of meaning that was purchased at a place that may be really meaningful to you and your boyfriend? Like, really, you're going to say no. And I said, I guess I'd be comfortable if I could know that anyone that wore it had a happy relationship. And once I said that, I just something kind of like struck in me. And I realized that was such an interesting thing to play with. But this is over a decade ago. And so I've just been really holding on to this idea, finding the right moment to sit down and write. I had first conceived of it as a film because screenwriting is, a big part of my career and has been. And then it needed more space. And so I decided to sit down and write it as a novel. But yes, this is exactly what I would do.
Wait, so did he propose with an heirloom ring?
No. And that's why we're married.
He listened and followed the rules.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you mentioned you wrote for TV before you sat down to write. This is your adult debut novel. I know you've written a YA book before this.
Yeah.
So is the difference really just the amount of time, the amount of space that you have for your writing? How do the two different styles, how does that work for you?
They're so different in terms of space, certainly. You're so contained in film and TV to timeline. So, features a certain amount of time, TV the same. So you can really breathe in a novel and you can take time, exploring areas and describing things in much more detail. But that's also the hard part. There's just so much more real estate to cover. And so the hardest part for me really was containing the amount of story in my head regularly so that I could stay organized and focused on the whole journey of my characters. And, that took grids and note cards and beautiful mind maps, because containing a half-hour TV script in your head becomes one skill set. Then you can expand to, a 1.5 hour feature film, but 309 pages, and keeping that in your head as you're working on it just became such an interesting challenge. So like structurally, that was the hardest part for me.
You also don't have to worry about budget. I mean, we go to Italy, to Portugal, to Boston, to New York, with LA. So you don't have to worry about how much it would cost to fly everybody to all those places.
It was that was a total dream, right? Like the lack of restriction was a total dream. And I will say, just for any writers listening, my ability to write prose was certainly not there right away. So I read a ton and I, read articles and I did a workshop and all this stuff to just get myself ready, because the difference between a page that is dialogue down the center and really having to fill that out in prose is, I think it's going to be a continued journey for me to really hone that skill.
Now, that all being said, nowadays we see a lot of books that get adapted into screenplays. That kind of puts you in a unique place to adapt your own novel for the screen.
Yeah, and that's really the dream of all dreams come true. We shall see. That is a place we're going to approach with this, and we'll see. We'll see.
You're going to need a big budget.
Now I'm in trouble. That's exactly right.
So now that you've done this, are you kind of hooked and you can't wait to like dive into your next book?
I'm in the middle of it right now. So I was really lucky that this became a 2-book deal with Putnam, with my publisher. And we are quickly going to release a second book. So sometime next year, calendar year 2025. And the really cool thing about that is they gave me the space to do a spiritual sister or a follow-up in vibe and tone. And I love a journey book. I love a ticking clock and a big project that my character goes on. So she's going to hit the road again, but not a true sequel. So yeah, I'm fighting through draft 2 right now.
So different set of characters.
Yeah.
Any other Italian superstitions?
Superstitions? No, but at the center is a big set of beliefs.
Okay.
And with Shay, I decided to write a believer, someone who is staunchly attached to her belief system. And I thought the real fun would be to write the absolute opposite character. And so I am writing a total skeptic this time who does not believe. And I will reveal that the subject matter is astrology.
Ooh, that's one of those topics that you can really get people set and talking, because you either want to read your New York Post horoscope every day, or you're one of those people who are like, get that garbage away from me.
Exactly. So I just thought I would challenge myself to flip the whole thing on its head, but still play with the idea of these belief systems. So in that way, that's kind of how the books go together, but the worlds and the characters are different.
Okay, so final question. What is the one superstition in your life that you either grew up with or maybe that you've accumulated as you've gotten older that you don't see yourself ever breaking from?
Oh, that's such a good one. I'm going to give you a family one and a personal one. Mm-hmm. My family one is such a silly one, but it's kind of become this fun thing. We never exit from a different door than we entered of the home. So if I walk in my parents' front door, I do not walk out that garage door ever. And I'm telling you, as you get up to leave a dinner party, Thanksgiving, anything, everyone will say, "Did you come in that door?" So it's such a silly, funny family thing. That,
you're never going to write a locked room mystery then.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So you know what? I'm just actually going to leave it at that, because I really think that is, that's the one. And it's so fun. And all my family really gets involved.
I'll tell you the one in my family, since we're sharing, is when you're communally sharing food, you can never be the person to take the last piece.
Ooh.
And this,
everything bad luck.
And this will come down to you taking that last piece and keep splitting it into small pieces. And like everybody keeps going back and forth, so nobody takes the last piece.
There's like a teeny morsel left on the plate. Yeah. I love that. See, I love the specific ones. Black cats, like whatever. Everyone has black cat stuff. Come on, give me that specific stuff, and I love it.
I think we could talk all day and probably write a whole other book about Italian grandmother superstitions.
I love it. It's a trilogy.
There you go. Well, we've been talking with Jessie Rosen. The new book is The Heirloom. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today to talk about it.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
And that's where we close the book on this chapter. Now, if you're planning to read Jessie's book or already have and are listening to this podcast to get some more juicy details, I will share one little tidbit Jessie shared with me after we stopped rolling. Ready? The heirloom of the title might not be the one you think it is. How's that for a tease? As always, you can follow me on X and Instagram at Lisa T Books. Also, head on over to lisatbooks.com and subscribe to my newsletter. I am Lisa T. Keep turning those pages.